Hi, and welcome back to your Puppy Blueprint, where you can stop guessing, wondering, and Googling how to have a well-behaved puppy and discover how to turn the chaos to calm. I'm your host, Kelly Fahey, and I'm joined by Georgina Bleza. Before we get started, I want to tell you a little bit about Georgina. Georgina is an illustrator and a dog trainer who is passionate about spreading canine education through simple visual comics. She has been working with dogs for just over 10 years, including 4 years in a large London rescue Battersea Dogs and Cats home. Georgina works a lot with dog-to-dog aggression, dog-to-human aggression, reactivity, and managing these more challenging behaviors in city environments. She also focuses a lot on pet parents, their mental health, and helping manage their anxiety. Today, Georgina and I are going to be talking about rebuilding relationships. Welcome, Georgina. I'm really glad to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. And, before we get started, I had mentioned at the top, how you're an illustrator. And if people don't know who you are and haven't followed your page, they really should, because her illustrations with communicating about training and tips and tricks are really fantastic. So definitely check that out, because you're going to be in for a real treat. So I'm a huge fan.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's I think I've always tried to kind of spread that message through art, and I used to focus a lot on realism and trying to make it really real, and then I kind of got into digital art sort of through force, really, because time and space to get out the paints or get out the pencils, and then with digital art I could just get things sort of done out a little bit faster and spread this message. And they kind of think, because the drawings are so
Oops, let me see. Yep. Oh, you cut out. You cut out us on first. You cut out a second on us there. So I'm just going to make sure our audio is okay.
That they've visually. So
there we go. Excellent. And I just want to make sure our audio is okay. You had cut out for a second. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you now. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, perfect. Excellent. I just want to make sure that we're okay before we continue on. So yeah, definitely check out Trick Woofs, because those illustrations are fantastic.
Thank you.
So yeah, so we're going to talk about rebuilding relationships, and people might not think about rebuilding relationships with puppies, because they're puppies and they're young. What could go wrong? But it doesn't really matter how much someone prepares or reads about puppies. Even someone who's working with a dog trainer, they're just not going to get it right all the time. Mistakes are inevitable. Everyone's human after all, right?
Exactly.
So how can we approach mistakes, that we might have made in the past?
Yeah, exactly. And you say hopefully we don't do it too much with puppies, but actually that's probably the time when our patience are tested the most, because we know the puppies are challenging. They get into things they shouldn't. They get up to things they shouldn't. We will often make mistakes where we will leave things out, and even if we have the best management in place, then there's going to be times when we slip up, and that's going to cost us a shoe or a laptop or something very valuable to us. So losing our temper or feeling frustrated, which our dogs pick up on, even if it's just a feeling within us, can be damaging. And it's a normal, natural behavior for us to have these reactions, to feel frustrated. And obviously, if it's happening a lot, we need to address why and see if we can help ourselves a little bit more to cope. But yeah, so the fact that they get damaged is normal, and to start rebuilding them would be to understand that these mistakes are normal, that we learn from our mistakes. That's how we grow. Each day, I always say it's like we can power off every night, and each day we can try again better the next day. So perhaps I'll try and be patient this time. And we've got this lovely, puppies, we know puppies aren't really a blank slate, because they've had already a certain amount of learning history, and we've got genetics and what the relationship with mum. So they're not a complete blank slate, but we do have this blank slate almost of a relationship where we can really start to pay into the bank account that we have with them, which means just putting all the good stuff in: the training, the affection, the play, in all sorts of senses.
Yeah, and I love that you bring up how puppies aren't blank slates, because that's like a common misconception that people have, is they think they're just working with this, new little being, and there's a lot more to it. We've got previous learning history. It doesn't matter if you got your puppies at 8 weeks; they've already had a learning history for 8 weeks that they've been alive, and
Mhm.
genetics. There's a lot that make up our puppies. That whole nature versus nurture and everything.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, exactly. And I think that's the thing that I often hear from owners is they will blame themselves for, why is my puppy particularly bitey, and my friend's puppy isn't, or why is my puppy chewy, even extra chewy, and things like that. And you've got to take the breed traits into consideration, or that they're all still individual, and they're going to go through teething pain differently and have different responses to that. So
Absolutely.
yeah, it's definitely not a sort of one way
Yeah.
road.
Yeah. And you bring up the biting, which is a real big factor for puppy parents. Like that's always like very high on the list, because, puppies bite. It's what
Yeah.
they do. And some are, bitier than others. And some seemingly have just like an easygoing time. They're to them it's bitey, but as trainers we see the different spectrums it can be. And
Yeah.
it's different. And going back to that previous life experiences. My new guy, who you might have seen hop off the couch just a few moments ago with his bone, he's
Mm.
he's a particularly bitey young guy. He missed 2 weeks with his litter mates during that critical period, because he was part of a neglect case, and so he had to have his eye removed. And so because he was recovering from surgery and everything that was going on, he had very
Yeah.
limited contact with his litter mates, and so it would be really easy to say, oh, he's a bad puppy, or a list of whole other things because of this seemingly extra biting. But
Yeah.
because he's lost two of those really important weeks with his litter mates, it really does impact who he is today.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so many other factors, that can happen, even if, a lot of people have puppies that have stomach issues. I don't know if I'm in a busy city, there's a lot of rubbish on the street,
Right.
and sometimes there's things like giardia that go around, and sometimes that can even have a big impact if they've had like a big stomach upset or an ear infection early on, something they've got to have a little bit more hands on. And it's things that are unavoidable to us but can have a certain effect in their lives. And you might find some dogs react to that fine, and they're completely unaffected by that. Like, we can sometimes see abuse cases, human to dog abuse cases, and the dogs still love people and
Right.
they get really unaffected by that. Or dogs that have been had wonderful interactions with people, and yet they're still quite worried of people. So
Yeah.
you never know what you're going to get, really. But what we can do is set them up for complete success, so we can try to do everything right in their environment, in their diet, in their interactions with us as much as possible,
Right.
to make sure that if they are predisposed to perhaps more nervy behavior, more challenging behavior, then we can put them in the best mindset, the best setup for working with that.
Absolutely, because we can't change the experiences our puppies already had. We can only start from the point that we bring them home and then help guide them. And as you said, set them up for success with everything. And because everyone is human, at some point, someone may lose their cool, so to speak, in certain
Yeah.
in certain situations, right? We're not robots either. We have good days, we have bad days. We also have emotions. And,
Mhm.
as I've said before, and I know we'll probably say it again sometime during this whole event, puppies aren't easy. Some days will be easier than others. What should someone do if they lose their cool? Because, we don't want people feeling guilty. I have raised my voice from time to time, not intentionally, because it's just sometimes it's habit. You catch your puppy all of a sudden going potty, and you're not yelling at your puppy, but you might just even go, no,
Yeah.
it's that instinct
Yeah.
that you have. And so there's varying degrees of how somebody might lose their cool. So
Yeah.
what could someone do if they have got upset and lost.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think that's the main thing, is it know it that it's normal. You're not the only one. You're not a bad person for doing that, because we've both admitted we've done it, and exactly at that times it might not even be, it's just a reaction. They pick up something horrendous from the ground, or they do toilet on your favorite rug, and you go just to and it's shocked them, but it's the reaction. So we need to take the pressure off. Okay, that's a normal reaction. I'm not a bad person for having that reaction. I'm just, I'm under a lot of pressure. I have a dog that's really challenging, really testing my patience. That's what puppies do. That's what they're for sometimes, I think. So sort of remove that pressure off you. But also, I think, to be aware of what that means. So if we do get angry with our dogs, we need to understand that that's not a learning moment for them. That's a loss of control for us. So it's a normal thing. Okay, that happened to me. I lost control. I'll do better next time. And I'm just going to let that go. But as long as we know, I didn't teach my dog anything from this. If anything, I might have taught them the wrong thing. So if we understand that, then that's better as well, because then we can just focus on what can I do to repair that, because I may have slightly damaged the relationship. And then I think things that are really simple can be a great way to just rebuild it. So something like a treat search, something really low pressure. We'll go on a treat search. We'll get out your favorite toy and we'll play a bit of tug. Nothing too big, or a really simple training session. Like, I love eye contact. Just doing an eye contact session. It's really, they get it right. Eye contact's that really nice connection. You're rewarding them for something simple. You can make it challenging. You can put a distraction in there. I like to put some food in my hand and just hold it out to the side, and then they've got a little challenging distraction too. And it's just that simple way to, yes, you're doing it right. You feel good, and then the dog feels good, because they're getting that boost in confidence again of, I'm pleasing her now. I feel really good about that.
Yeah. And I love how you said that in that moment, it's kind of an us problem. It's not a puppy problem. And how you said even earlier that, we get a chance to do better tomorrow. And people, it's going to happen. We might have a day where we're feeling like really stressed. So our stress level isn't starting down here, it's up high, and it's sometimes we have a shorter fuse at that moment. So if we do lose our cool or our temper, I love those suggestions that you made about just turning it around really quickly and doing a treat
slightly lost connection, I think.
Cool. Are we okay? Let's see there. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think you're back.
All right. Oh my goodness. I wonder what's happening this morning. So yeah, I love how you said also that people can get like a redo the next day, because, today was just maybe not my best day, and tomorrow I get to try again. And you spoke about how we might inadvertently, damage that relationship to some degree. And I think a good example is house training, right? We talked about that earlier, because nobody wants to clean pee or poo off their carpeting. And it's really easy for somebody to get upset with their puppy for toileting in the house, but they just don't know any better at that time. And often we see, I think you're hard pressed to go into any Facebook group or online forum where somebody's not going to say, they looked guilty, so I knew they soiled in the house. But we know it's not guilt. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, like how that all comes into play with how they learn and why that happens?
Yeah, exactly. So I think a great example, because some people are very convinced that their dog's guilty, and it's hard to, and we know our dogs really well. So when we see an emotion that we connect with in them, or a feeling that we connect within them, it's hard to get away from that, I feel. Because I think there's good points and bad points to humanizing dogs and the way they feel, but which you'll see in a lot of my comics, I do sort of compare humans and dogs quite a bit. But when we're sort of attaching things like stubbornness or guilt, then I think there's a little bit of a danger there, because what's actually happening is our dogs are reacting from our response. So if we get home and they've peed in the house and we're angry at that, then they're going to start to associate us coming home with being angry. So they're predicting that fear. Oh, she's going to be angry, and what we're actually seeing is a more fearful body language. And a great way to sort of use this analogy is they might even have the association of the pee on the floor is connected to your anger. Not that they did the pee, but the pee means you're going to be angry. So, you could put a puddle of water on the floor and they probably react the same way, because they say that puddle of water means I'm going to get this negative response from my owner. I don't know why, but they associate the puddle with that, not with the fact that they've gone to the toilet inside.
Right.
So what we're seeing is this just reaction to our anger or our feelings, when actually, they've done it, it's happened, we can't change that now. What we need to do is set them up better in the first place.
Yeah. So, that look of what people think is guilt isn't actually guilt. It's more of fear, because it's their reaction based on our reaction. When you come home, you typically come home, and how do most people greet their puppies, right? I mean, when we come home, like, it's the best part of our day. And so
Yeah.
we're typically, oh, hi, how are you? Oh, who's my good boy? Who's my good girl? And then on the day you come home and they might have soiled in the house, all of a sudden now you're like, oh, what did you do? Did you do that? And your reaction can range from a little bit lighter to really upset, depending on your mood. And now your puppy's all of a sudden going, whoa, wait a minute, what happened? They usually come home and they're all happy, smiley. So
Yeah.
what it is the puppies, it's unpredictable. How are you going to walk through the door? Are you going to come through, who's my good girl? Or are you going to come through there, what did you do? And so they're not sure. And so it's not guilt, it's that uncertainty, and it's that fear that they have. They don't know what version of us is going to come walking through that door. And
exactly.
it's a
And
real,
then that,
yeah,
yeah.
it's a good
And that can
example of
set
how
them up
dogs
for,
learn by association.
yeah, absolutely, definitely. And I think, when you said about that, even when you do it in a lighter way, with sort of, what did you do? We could even perhaps be reinforcing that body language, because they're getting a lot of attention for it. And then,
Right.
it's something that they keep practicing. If we think about, a feeling that we want them to project, we want a more confident body language, because if we're reinforcing fear, then we might get a dog that becomes more fearful. A bit like in us, if we're instructed to do a presentation or something, we might be told to stand tall, and that's going to make us feel more confident. Whereas if we get smaller, we feel less confident. So we want to make sure that we're rewarding confident body language, the way they feel better, to give them attention for that, rather than this fearful, I'm backing away, I'm not comfortable with this. We want to say, okay, we'll listen to that, and we'll give you that space.
Yeah. And our puppies are always learning, whether we realize it or not, right? Somebody's always the learner, somebody's always the teacher. And so in these moments, your puppy is learning, whether you're not even having a training session, but they are learning. And, a lot of it ties back, and it's interwoven with socialization and new experiences. Like, is this good and safe, or is it scary and bad? And they're putting that into those little compartments into their brain. And so that's what they're going to recall in the future. Just like us, right? Our learning history. For everything.
Exactly. And I think when you do have those times where you do perhaps lose your temper in those moments, then we have to think of what behaviors that we find desirable we might have damaged. So if we do come home and we're angry, then perhaps we need to work a little bit closer on leaving our dogs, because, like you said, if they think we're going to be unpredictable when we come back, leaving might become then a problem, because they don't want us to go and then come back as perhaps this different person who's feeling angry. And if we'd use recall, for example, and they haven't come back to us for ages, and they come back and we say, you took ages to come back, they're going to say, I don't want to come back to you again. So we might have damaged the recall a bit there. So it's, what do we need to repair specifically as well, that we could potentially have done a little bit of damage to?
And that's a fantastic example, because coming when called is often a struggle for people. They feel it's like a harder behavior to teach. And people can get really frustrated and lose their cool with their puppies or even their dogs. if they're not coming back when we ask them to. And sometimes we might be in a time crunch. And so we really want our dogs to get back here like right now. And if we keep calling our dogs and we keep calling our dogs and we get more frustrated and they finally come to us all wiggly and happy because they kind of came
Yes.
they came to us on their own time, which, you know, somebody might not like. And then you yell at them for doing that. What we've actually just done is punish them for doing the very thing that we wanted them to do. We wanted them to come and they did,
Yeah.
but we yelled at them like, you know, you took too long, and, you know, and what words you might be using and your body language and how you might grab your dog's collar to bring them in the house because, you know, you're frustrated because now you're going to be late. Um,
Hmm.
your dog puts that in that memory bank. You know, coming when called is bad. It's scary. It's not fun. And
Yes, exactly. And
yeah,
they
and
say, you've been calling me for ages and now you're mad. I'm so
yeah,
confused.
I just did it. What do you want? But the dog doesn't know what we wanted was for them to come quicker. And
Exactly.
this is where how you mentioned earlier about dogs, they're not stubborn. You know, we could very easily label that dog is stubborn for not coming to us, but in reality, it has nothing to do with being stubborn. It's just that they don't know what it is that we want them to do in that moment, or they haven't learned it to that degree of difficulty. Sure, I can come from 10 feet outside when there's nothing going on, but I can't come from 50 feet outside when there's deer in the woods. Those are
Hmm.
two different scenarios. And just because our dog might get this right most of the time doesn't mean they're going to get this bigger challenge right at all, or even sometimes. And so
Yeah.
we can, and so then we have a dog who has a hard time coming when called, because when they do, it's not fun for them. It's not pleasurable.
Yeah, yeah, and it's that element of yeah, I'm scared. What if I come and you yell at me again? Maybe you don't want me to come. But yes, I always say, to help our frustration as well. If we've whatever they've done when you were calling them, however long it took them to come back, however angry you are, you have to go, good dog, and that can help us feel a bit more positive too, even though we
Right.
we might
Yeah.
not
Take
be.
that deep breath. and
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
yeah, and it goes back to someone's always the learner and someone's always the teacher. So in that moment, your intention was, I just got to get my puppy back inside because I've got to get to work or to a doctor's appointment or whatever it is. Um, but they didn't come as quickly as we wanted. And then when we, you know, express our feelings when they come to us, you know, whatever level of being upset is, they have
Yeah.
learned that coming when you call them is scary. And then we wonder why
Mhm.
they don't want to, they want to play the game another time because it's not
Yeah.
fun for them. You know, bad
Yeah.
stuff happens. Bad stuff happens when I do this, so I don't want to do it. Just
Hmm.
like us, just like us. And so,
Yeah.
you know, it can be hard to imagine, but sometimes situations occur that have nothing even to do with us. We might end up in a situation with our puppy where something has happened, you know, outside of us with some other person out in the public, or at the hands of other dog owners. You know, how can we repair the damage sometimes done by other people?
And I think that's probably the hardest thing in any dog ownership. If you've got a tricky dog, if you've got a puppy, if you've got just the most bomb-proof dog, you come into these challenges with people, and yeah, the I'm friendly dogs that perhaps aren't I'm friendly, or your dog isn't going to cope with them, whether they're friendly or not. And with puppies as well, even very friendly dogs can be really overwhelming. Some puppies, aren't don't have the confidence when they come out. They have that fear, and or they might be going through a particular fear period, and so that friendly dog is actually a really scary experience for your puppy when they're bounding around and they're a little bit out of control. So we need to recognize that these situations are going to happen. I mean, I have countless ones myself, and every owner I speak to has very many. We're living in a much more dog saturated world. So it's kind of a bit of acceptance on our part that we can't control some situations, so we need to let go of those. We can only control our own reactions to them. So we can support our dogs in the best way we can. So, there's situations where we might have to get involved or body block, or just even pick our puppies up if it's safe to do so, to get them out of the situation, show them that we are their safe space. Try and let it go where we can. If you feel like, oh, that dog has completely ruined my puppy's day and he might have this fear for life, and try to take that stress away, because what happens. We can try and prevent it and do as much as we can possible, but we're never going to stop our puppies going through all the stress or any frustration, and they need a certain amount of stress. They need to get through that. They need a certain amount of frustration, otherwise they don't learn how to cope with that in the future. So we can't prevent them from experiencing it, but we can help support them through it.
Right.
And sort of I find it, because I hold on to these things all the time, even if you've got a dog that reacts and you think about it for ages afterwards. We have to understand as well that other people might be different. So that person that perhaps shouldn't have approached, sometimes you think all day, that person's an idiot. Why did they do that? Why didn't they read my signals? But people are all going through their own thing. They're all oblivious. We've all probably done something a bit silly sometimes, and we look back and think, oh, why did I walk that way? I shouldn't have walked that way. And so it's just letting go of that and kind of having this different perspective of rather focusing on, why did they do that? Why did they do it? Perhaps they were going through something there. Perhaps they had to walk that way with their dog. Yes, they probably are silly. They probably should have had their dog more under control. But if we can just let it go a little bit more, I find it helps us reset a bit better and then build our dog's confidence again.
Yeah, because I think everybody listening has probably been at some point in their life out and about, and somebody's off-leash dog has ran up to their dog. And it doesn't matter if you've got a happy-go-lucky dog or a dog who doesn't like other dogs. It's still not a great experience for anybody. It's for our dogs. I have dogs who are dog friendly, but they don't love it when a strange dog just comes darting out of nowhere. It takes you by surprise, just like us. Like, if you can imagine just walking down the street one day and somebody is running up to you out of nowhere trying to give you a hug, you're gonna be like, wait, whoa, what's going on with this? And it's gonna take you by surprise. And if you're not first of all, it's a stranger, you don't know who they are, and if you're not a hugger, it's gonna be even worse. And and as you said, we can't control every situation. We can just do our best that we can do. And when something does happen that might be a little upsetting to our puppies, doing something fun right afterwards to try to help counterbalance that is like that treat scatter, or just getting silly and kind of running in the other direction with your puppy to kind of take the attention away from what just happened can help, for lack of a better word, snap them out of it, so to speak. Like, oh, that was weird, right? Okay, let's do this. And then we just get them kind of in a different mindset and play a little bit of games with them to kind of keep them moving and everything. But these things are going to happen. We're not gonna go through life where somebody doesn't do something and then you second guess yourself afterwards, like, oh, why did I let my puppy say hello to that person? Or why did I let that dog approach everything? Yep. Yeah. So, with our puppies, how can someone offer more choice to their puppies to help them as well? Uh-oh.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a great one, isn't it? I think we forget how little choice our dogs actually have when we look at it. The first thing we're doing with our puppies is perhaps recall, perhaps heel work, and putting them on a lead, putting a harness on them, going for their first injections, and a lot of it's holding, restraining, and limiting their space. We're going to want to manage their space a lot. So choice kind of completely goes out the window, and that's quite a nice way as well that we can counterbalance those interactions with perhaps two in your face strangers or two in your face dogs, is to then say, don't forget you have a choice to move away. So we can do a couple of times where we see a dog and perhaps we run in the other direction and we have some treats there, or a person comes and we say, no thank you, not today, we walk in the other way, just so we're reminding our dogs that even though you're on lead, you can still move away. I've got your back, I'll go with you. So we have that option of choice, because what we see with on lead stuff is, if there is any fearfulness, then and they feel like they can't run away, so we remove that option of flight, then that's sometimes why we see more reactions on lead, because all they've got left is fight. If they feel worried, they want to say, go away, go away. And we might see that vocal to me on lead, which is a really scary thing, right? Imagine being attached to someone when you're in a whole new world. But I'm going to run with you. So if you want to run, if you want to move away, I'm with you. I've got you. So kind of reminding them that sometimes they can go their own way is quite a nice thing to do. Obviously, we want to focus on our lead stuff and all things like that. But we also want to say sometimes you have a choice that perhaps you set the pace. Perhaps we go a little bit slower and we just do some sniffing, or maybe you want to do a bit more of a march today. So they're kind of in charge of that.
Right.
And listening is a really good one. So I think we forget, or it's hard to read those really low level signals, like we were saying, that might look like guilt, but actually those really subtle, fearful ones where they might look away, avoiding their eye contact. What we're actually seeing is those low level signals that I'm not comfortable, before they go up the ladder and they're growling, showing teeth and showing those big signals. So if we look at those, perhaps we're approaching them with a harness, perhaps we're going over for a stroke, but they're actually saying, oh, I don't really want this right now. If we say, okay, and give them a big, obvious back away, you often see the relief, in their, oh, you heard me. I don't need to take this further. You're listening. That's amazing. So that can be just such a nice thing to offer to your puppy or your dog, and just really learn and watch your dog and see what they look like individually. But learning about general body language as well can be very, very useful.
Yeah, and it's a great way to help build their confidence with something, because when they feel that they have choice in situations, they're going to just feel more confident overall. We see that a lot, and I've always used the crate training example, like a puppy who might not want to go in the crate because they're forced to do so all the time. But when you start playing games and the puppy is learning that I can come out, then they want to go in more because we've made it a fun game about going in, and then they have that relief that they can come out if they're not ready to stay in longer. And then you can very quickly often see a puppy really change how they feel about that, as one example.
Yeah, exactly. And that's so important. And I like the, if the crates, perhaps that's a part that's perhaps been damaged because originally they were put in there and now they have a really negative association of the crate, then those games are great. And even sort of having like a little target and they touch and the door closes, so they're then in control of the door and they can open and close the door by touching a target. And then we've got choice handling, where perhaps they have a start stop button of where we handle. It's all sort of going on to more sort of advanced teaching, but it's so rewarding and worth teaching these little behaviors. That, and if you add choice kind of in these controlled setups, then you're adding choice into your dog's life so much more, where they just go, oh yeah, okay, in some situations I have control, which makes me feel more confident.
Right. Yeah. And it goes back to, as you just mentioned, that confidence. It helps build that bond with you and your puppy, and goes back to what you were saying earlier before about how, I got your back. This might be hard for you, but I'm going to help support you and everything. And so it's really something so simple that we can do to help build confidence and a bond with our puppy, is to give more choice. And of course, we're not talking about, the puppy wants to run out in the street. We're talking about safe interactions. We're not talking about anything that's going to put our puppies in harm, because we're not going to just let them say, well, it's the puppy's choice and get to do what they want. We've got to make sure that we set those situations up for success, but things that they're learning, kind of helping them out in those moments, can help make that learning go much smoother for them. And
Exactly.
yeah, and with regards to building a bond, building a bond and earning trust is so important with our puppies. Just because they're fed good food or have like lots of toys that you've purchased for them, and you've got a secure roof over their head, it doesn't mean they feel safe. Safe and secure are two different things. What are the best tools for repairing a bond or building a bond with your puppy?
Yeah, so I think, and this kind of goes on from the choice thing as well, is what I think one of the biggest mistakes I see with puppies is if they are worried of something, we try to encourage them up. We'll try and show them that that thing is safe. That's quite a common thing, is to say it's okay, this dog is fine, or this person fine, or this plastic bag is fine, whatever they spook. And that tends to inadvertently damage the relationship a little bit, because they're saying, oh, but I don't want to. If I've got a phobia, then I don't want I don't want that I don't want someone to pull me over to it where I have no control because they've got me. So what would help me with the bond with that is they say, in your own time, you can go and investigate. And that immediately makes say, wow, I feel safe with you. I feel good with you. And it's all about sort of putting in, I love that bank account analogy, where if we can put in all the good stuff with our dogs, with puppies, it's great because we don't even have to focus on particularly training. We just want to reward the stuff that we like, basically, because the stuff we like, if we keep rewarding it, is going to happen more. So if I go to a cafe and my puppy lies down with a chew toy, then I'm going to give them a treat for that because I like that behavior. And if they're walking by my side and they look up at me, I'm going to just reward that. So it's like you just have this constant treat pouch on you, which in puppyhood is great to have because you can just keep rewarding all the stuff you like, and then it's just going to keep happening in adulthood because they've got such a good feeling about doing it.
Right.
And you just keep paying it, and that is all just constantly going to build that bond, constantly going to repair any damage that might have happened, even if you had to take them and hold them down for that injection at the vet's. Okay, that's a bit of damaging, but you know what, you did toy play with them, you treated them so much, you were a good dog all the way to the cafe, all the way to the vet's, and in the waiting room they had lots of fuss. So you put in all that stuff, so that's not so damaging that they had to be held at the vet's, because they're like, oh, but you comforted me after, you did all this lovely stuff. So that withdrawal that they had isn't such an impact.
Yeah. And if we can keep building that bond and that confidence in our puppy with all of these good things in that bank account, like we keep putting it all into that trust account, all these good experiences and these great behaviors that we love, when we do have something that's scarier, like maybe that vet visit or the interaction with the other dog on the street, it's not that it's not going to be scary, but we've had all these other great experiences that this one isn't magnified as much because we can always go back to adding more to the bank account. This may have made a withdrawal from that trust account, but we can build it back up because we've got such a great history of all the bonding, the training games and everything that we've done with our puppy.
Yeah, exactly, definitely. And it's whatever your puppy loves at the time. Like sometimes they're sleepy and they want that affection, or perhaps if we're short on time, then what do they crave? Do they crave the training? Do they crave the toy play? Do they crave the cuddles? Like giving them what they particularly need. And toy play is such a good one. I find it's a great bonding one because you can really get into it with your dog, and it builds their confidence, it changes their emotional state. It's a fantastic way to just
Yeah.
interact with them.
It is. I love just goofing around with my puppies and my dogs. It's just fun, and it makes me feel good and happy too, because I love watching how happy they are when we're just playing silly games outside, whether it's like a little fun game of chase me or whatever it is that we're playing. They just
Yeah,
they have a blast, and it makes you feel good as well. I mean, who doesn't want
yeah,
that?
exactly. Yeah.
Excellent. So, Georgina, you have something for everybody who's listening today. Can you tell us what you're giving to our audience?
Yeah, so I've got a free pre-puppy guide. So that's just looking at if you're deciding that you want to get a puppy and you want to look into where getting them from might be the right place. So looking into what to look for in a breeder, or if you want to go down rescue, what to look for in a rescue, and then the setup. So what equipment you might need, and setting them up for success.
Yeah, that's a great tip because we do get our puppies and we bring them home, and then we find ourselves quickly getting up to our eyeballs in changes. And so getting set up before you bring your puppy home, and even if you already have your puppy, these tips are going to be really helpful for you on that setup and what you need to do to get you going and make sure that you're not getting frustrated and you're not losing your cool with your
Yeah,
puppy. you so much
Exactly.
for sharing that with everyone. That's fantastic. This information has been so valuable for everybody, because again, we're not going to get it right all the time. We're humans. Do you have any last minute thoughts for our audience before we go?
Um, I think just take the pressure off yourself. Understand that puppy blues might be very normal as well. It's caring for something, taking responsibility for something is very overwhelming, and it does change your life. So there might be a little bit of mourning for the old life, and that's also normal, and it's a part of the process. But having the puppy itself is the most rewarding thing, so it is all definitely worth it in the end.
It really is. It really is. And I hear my guy, he's snoozing over here. And right before we got on, he was a total crazy running around puppy in the background. So
Yeah. And that's the parts you don't always see in other people's journeys. So you might think, oh wow, look, he's so calm and lovely, but you miss
yeah.
those moments where you're going, oh, he's
Yeah.
nuts.
Yep. Right before we started, him and my other dog were horsing around like crazy back here. And I was like, well, this is not good timing. Um, but we just arranged our situation a little bit differently. So while everybody probably would have loved to have watched the silliness that was going on behind me, it might have been a little hard to hear with all the rowdiness going on. Oh goodness. So I really want to thank, Georgina, for joining us today and talking with us about rebuilding relationships and creating those bonds. And I want to thank all you out there who've joined in our discussion. Um, Puppies aren't easy. I've probably said it a bunch of times already, because they're not. You're gonna have some trials and tribulations. So thank you so much for joining us and learning how to work with your puppy. Don't forget to grab your free gift from Georgina in the link below. That's going to be right below this video. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.